Call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 4 relating to Chinese Australians.
Call the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to Chinese Australians in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. This year marks 40 years since the commencement of diplomatic relations between Australia and China, and 209 years since the first record of Chinese migration to the colonies that became our nation. Both of these events provided important milestones in the development of a strong and dynamic interaction between the two nations and the growth of a vibrant community of Chinese Australians that has contributed to all facets of our nation's advancement. According to the 2011 census, 16.9% of Bennelong residents list Chinese ancestry, just shy of 17.3% of people who listed their ancestry as Australian. 12.9% of Bennelong residents were born in China or Hong Kong, and 17.2% speak either Cantonese or Mandarin at home, more than 6 times the national average that now places Mandarin as the most widely spoken non-English language in Australia. The Bennelong region has flourished from the diversification of cultures around our local community. This is most evident during cultural festivities such as Lunar New Year. Every January and February is a time of colour, dance and song as local streets and shopping centres become hubs of community and cultural celebration. Like many locals at these events, I have been taught to write my name in traditional Chinese characters, to wish people Kong Hei Fat Choi, and to give and receive traditional lollies with blessings of good luck for the year ahead. Of course, the history of Chinese migration to Australia is not limited to the past 40 years. Whilst historical debate may never sort out fact from fiction on these issues, Chinese books dating back more than 2,000 years are said to describe Indigenous Australians, the boomerang, and the presence of kangaroos in the Imperial Palace in Peking. 15th century Ming Dynasty statuettes have been discovered around the Gulf of Carpentaria, and some Aboriginal cave paintings in the Flinders Island depict ancient Chinese junk ships. In more recent times, immigration documents recorded a carpenter named Ahuto travelling from China to Australia in 1803, and just 15 years after the first fleet of convict English to set upon our soil. More is known of Mak Say Ying, who arrived in 1818 and 11 years later became the publican at the Lion Inn Hotel in Parramatta, the first of many thousands of Chinese Australians to establish successful enterprises and become leaders of local businesses. The gold rush of the 1850s saw a large spike in Chinese migration, with many of them forcibly repatriated during some of the darker days of this legislation under the strict rules of Immigration Restriction Act. Throughout this time, Chinese Australians have made a significant contribution to our nation. The White City Tennis Centre, which I have a long history with, was originally a Chinese market garden, and another still operates in La Perouse after more than a century. Much of the attention today focuses on Chinatown precincts in each of the major cities, offering a snapshot of life an ocean away and tendering shopping and culinary delights to all Australians in a modern form of cultural engagement. Yet with such strong historical ties, this engagement should not be limited to Peking duck and the Lunar New Year. As we share so many of our day-to-day experiences and we celebrate the growth of our multicultural society, it is important that from early in life we are encouraged to befriend and interact with people of all cultures. President Nixon's use of ping pong as a non-threatening tool to facilitate diplomacy between the United States and China and enhance cultural ties highlighted the way that sport can be used to great effect. This was something I learned firsthand in my previous career, and in particular on the 5th of November 1979, when I participated in the first professional tennis match in China, which received worldwide headlines as another example of improving relations between the Western world and a closed global superpower. I competed against a little-known Swedish player by the name of Bjorn Borg, and considering the scoreline, I was happy to invoke the Chinese slogan, "Friendship first, competition second." I obviously lost. We also played an exhibition doubles match alongside China's 2 leading players in front of some 6,000 people at the Sheng People's Stadium in Canton, and it was telecast to thousands more throughout the region. Prior to the match, a Chinese government official told the international media tennis is not that popular in China, but more people are getting interested. I think this match will have a very good influence. Fast forward to 2012, and China now boasts a French Open winner, 2 doubles Grand Slam tournament winners, an Olympics gold and bronze medal, the Shanghai Masters established in China as a major tennis venue, and the China Open goes from strength to strength. This is just an example of the powerful role that sport can play in facilitating interaction and creating the dynamic that breaks down cultural and political barriers and builds bridges between individuals, industries and governments. In President Nixon's case, it was only 1 year after the US table tennis team visited that the President himself travelled to China and met with Mao Zedong, an historic moment in global politics that set the stage for the commencement of diplomatic relations between Australia and China shortly after. It was with this in mind that I developed the Bennelong School's table tennis program. Shortly after the last election, as I visited local schools in Bennelong, I noticed a troubling pattern. Very few students from an Asian background were participating in traditional Australian sports. Sporting activity is one of the best things an individual, young or old, can do for physical, mental and social health. Different body shapes and cultural upbringing attract an interest and willingness to participate in different activities. As a result, providing access to a range of activities is essential to facilitate the same bridge-building goals achieved at diplomatic levels. With the generosity of the Hyundai Australia, the Bennelong School's table tennis program is donating table tennis tables to every school in the electorate. The sporting competition is then administered by Table Tennis Australia, who will run coaching clinics and school competitions. Many tables have already been delivered to the schools, and a number of students have expressed their excitement to compete against their peers and friends. Later in the year, an inter-school competition will serve as opening act to the Bennelong Cup Test match, featuring the Chinese women's team and the Korean men's team competing against Australia. If the scoreline from last year's Test match against Korea is any guide, the same friendship first and competition second slogan will likely be invoked. In order to celebrate their visit, a feature event will take place in the Great Hall, including students from schools throughout the electorate and the Bennelong School Choir. These programs are important reminders of the way that sport can unite people from a diversity of cultural backgrounds, whether they are the younger school kids or the most senior diplomats. The bringing together of China and Korea to compete alongside each other can perpetuate another way that these two nations can associate and cooperate through participation in sport. Earlier today, I spoke with the United States Consul General in Sydney to discuss the possibility of joining next year, a competition where East meets West, where the great powers of this sport can partner with more recent adopters to have some fun and provide entertainment for Bennelong's multicultural audience. It is often thought the more light-hearted events between distant friends that our similarities, instead of our differences, can achieve some much-needed oxygen. The interaction that follows helps to develop components of shared history, which are then built upon through trade and migration, and progressively bridges are built, and the building blocks of understanding, loyalty and trust are developed to ensure an enduring relationship. Mr Deputy Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the member for Berowra for seconding this motion. His active friendship with the Chinese Australian community is well documented, and he has been a strong and experienced guide for me as we have attended many community events together. I would also like to recognise my colleagues, the members for Ryan, Scullin, Chisholm and Canberra, who will also be speaking on this issue. I commend this motion to the House.